Welcome to the CCM Legacy Cast. I'm your host, Chris Gaines, and today our guest is David Payton. David hails from the great state of Georgia, and if you haven't had a chance to follow David's work, you can definitely do that online, but we're going to talk a lot about his career. He has been a multi-talented guy for many years. You probably saw him during the Mylon, LeFevre, and Broken Heart years, and we're going to spend some time talking about that for sure. But he spent time with the group Eternity, Cruz Family, David Teams in the Calling, Fear Free, and of course the Mylon years. And he's done so much even before and after that. And we're going to do that today as we get into the CCM Legacy Cast, and it starts right now. This is CCM Legacy Cast. I'm Chris Gaines, and there's my partner, Scott Gaulden himself.
Chris, man. How you doing, buddy?
Today, David Payton and the great state of Georgia. What is the greatest product of the state of Georgia, in your opinion? Go.
Coca-Cola.
Herschel Walker, by far. Herschel Walker. Besides David Payton, I still think it's Herschel Walker.
I think you may be right, okay? I think you may be right. So now that I think about it, that's... Yeah,
well, you know, when we started this project, I told you there was a handful of artists that were really special to me, and Mylon, LeFevre, and Broken Heart was one of them. And David is just an amazing talent. And I can't wait to go deeper into his life. I think a lot of people don't know his backstory and where he's been. And he really played a crucial role in the development of really the Broken Heart band and so many different things that he's doing now. So with that in mind, Scott, I'd like to bring on David Payton. David, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really so glad to have you, man.
Good to be here. Thank you.
You bet. Now, what part of Georgia are you in? Tell me again.
Woodstock, Georgia, about 40 minutes north of Atlanta, northwest of Atlanta. Headed toward Chattanooga from Atlanta. So,
sweet. Now, are you born and raised in that area?
I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I lived there until I graduated and left and never came back. Right out of high school, I went on the road with a group called His Ambassadors and flew out to Denver, and it was just a whole nother world. Was on the road for
wow. I had no idea you had to swim through the Cruz family. I want to hear about that. Of course, they're local here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, at least were at the time, if I recall, or at least nearby.
It was a short stint with them. I was there probably less than a year, but I'd met them I was with Eternity, and we did one of the big Gaither festival. They always have the coolest where you know, artists come together and do all this stuff, and I met them through that, and they seemed to be a little more my wheelhouse because Eternity was great, awesome, but they were more of the Truth variety, if you remember Truth.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The fingers in the front and horns and all that stuff, and I kind of sat over the side and played guitar. Well, Cruz was a little more country, blues, gospel, where I grew up, and went with them for a while, and then I moved to Atlanta from that.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into some of the contemporary Christian music part of your story, but I'm going to turn it over to my buddy and let him talk just a little bit about maybe before that. What was that like really before you got into that? So, Scott, why don't you take the baton for a while?
Let's go back to Indiana. Let's find out. Let's find out. So, you were born in Indiana. Tell us a little bit about the early years in Indiana. What was your earliest days of childhood like?
I barely remember the earliest years in Indiana because when I was 4 years old, we moved to Kentucky. And
okay.
That was even better. Southern gospel, what I called pew jumping, beehive wearing, borderline snake handling church, Pentecostal holiness church we went to, and it was all guitars and tambourines and, you know, just hillbilly as you can get just about. Wow. And that was my first musical influence. Started playing guitar when I was about 5 years old. I had to play it on my lap like this because I couldn't reach around it. And
how did you learn guitar at 5? I mean, tell me a little bit about how you first picked it up.
It was very rudimentary. It was, you know, G chord and D chord. If I could get it, then it was a lot more like Secret Agent Man and Batman, just two note things and stuff like that. But as I got to be older, my mom bought me a little Silvertone electric guitar from Sears.
Yes.
The amp built in the case, and the whole deal was $72, and that was huge money for us back then.
Sure.
So that's what I learned on.
Was your family really active in church then? Were you the kind of people
very.
that were there when the
Oh yeah,
doors are open? You guys
yeah.
were there basically.
Mom and
Yeah.
dad sang, and dad played guitar and banjo and a couple other things, and mom and dad sang together. And I started playing in church, and that's where I kind of got some chops where I could sing and play together. And mom would have me do that for her friends when she came over. She'd have me sing country songs and all that old stuff. And I was about 6, 7, 8 years old, and my dad died when I was 8.
Tell us a little bit about that. How did that
Well,
happen?
he was country. Nobody in my family, and I'm the baby of 7 kids. Nobody in my family but me graduated from high school. So
Wow.
he went to 8th grade, I believe, and so he had to work. He worked at factories. He was in the logs business and kind of construction and did all kinds of things. He did the best he could. I mean, 7 kids.
Yeah, hard
Most of
working, high paying, best paying job he could find, probably,
right,
right?
but he was
Yeah.
in the logwoods, and
Okay.
he was pulling a log up on the log truck with a chain on a tractor, and the chain got caught, and the tractor wheels kept going, and it went over on top of him like that, and it
Oh
killed
dear.
killed him instantly.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he went to work one day, and then he wasn't there anymore. So
Yeah.
there was no long goodbyes, and no cancer or any of that. So I don't know which is best, being able to say goodbye for a long time or just being over. So
Yeah. That had to be hard on your mom at the time with
oh,
all 7 kids. And well, how old was the oldest in your family at that time?
the oldest was I was 8, so he was 28. And
Okay.
so he was married and had a couple of little boys on his own by that time.
Okay.
And yeah, my mom was devastated. She
I can
got
only
really mad
imagine.
at God, and we stopped going to church, and she started drinking, and it just went from holiness to unholiness really quick. And
Sure.
that was probably the most dramatic thing, more than the deaths.
Yeah,
And
the changes that occurred in her and the family that came
yeah,
along.
yeah,
Yeah. No, I get
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. She started drinking and running around with men and bringing them home and all that stuff. And I'm like 8, 9, and I'm afraid of God, because the Pentecostal holiness thing is you got to stay saved.
Yeah.
You got to maintain your salvation by being a good kid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like, my mom's going to go to hell if she don't straighten up. So I cry myself to sleep some nights just because, I didn't know where she was going to be.
Did you lose your activity in church at that time,
Oh
or
yeah.
were you okay? So,
She took us and dropped us off for maybe the first year.
yeah,
Uh, and then it just tapered off. We didn't go at all.
okay,
No, I mean, I still never lost my fear of God. I would pray and stuff the best I knew how as a kid
sure,
for her and the situation. And I just really wanted things to change.
yeah,
And when I was
yeah.
11, I went to school and came home, and they took me over to my cousin's house, and I was kind of weird. It was an unusual situation. And all my uncles and aunts and everybody was there, and my brother called. He wasn't there. He called me and told me my mom had died that day.
Wow.
She had a heart attack going down the road in the car
Oh my word.
and was gone instantly. And
Wow.
so that was 11. I was 11 then. And so,
You grew up fast, didn't you?
well, hard. I
Yeah.
mean, it was
Yeah.
it was hard. It was just traumatic. And then, but that was kind of a salvation because I mean, we were really poor, and my mom was drinking and smoking and running around, and that's the situation I was living in. But when
Right.
she passed away, I moved in with my oldest brother, and he was much more Indianapolis suburban, middle class. Had air conditioning and a color television. It was like and carpet.
Yeah.
I'm serious. It was
No,
like
I
Ocean
understand.
Sky. We were really poor. I mean, we lived in a stone house that had no indoor bathroom when my mom died. That's
Wow.
how. That's my situation.
That was it. Still in Kentucky. You were in Kentucky at
Yeah,
that point. Wow.
and I was 11. I lived in Kentucky from age 4 to age 11, and then I moved to Indianapolis at 11, and that's when things changed, and my music kind of took off after that.
So
Excuse me.
We'll probably come back to that because you can't
Yeah.
go through something like that without it having an impact on the rest of your life.
Of
But
course.
I also know that when you're 11 and 12 years old, you don't know the impact that it's having on your life. You're
No, you're
just,
just kind of being battered around like a,
yeah.
badminton, whatever those things are, birdie.
Yeah. So obviously, you had to make a commitment to Christ at an early age at some point, David. You want
Many
to talk
times.
a little? Yeah. One time wasn't enough.
No, every
T-
week. But I mean,
yeah.
you know,
Tell us a little bit about what that was like.
well, the preachers were hillbillies, but they were just fire. I'm serious. They would literally run around screaming and sweating, and you know, there weren't snakes or anything, but it was kind of cool and exciting every week, And the music was loud and passionate, and
Nobody fell asleep during those services, did
no,
they?
no, people are falling on the floor and all this kind of stuff, and we're kids, and we're kind of giggling over on the side and stuff, but it sunk in with me. The Jesus thing really did. It's just
Yeah.
I was afraid of God, but I knew Jesus loved me. I had that in my head, and
Okay.
it was unconditional. But I just thought, I had to maintain it. I had to be a Christian 24/7, or
Mm.
you don't want to die in the middle of a sin. God forbid,
What was it like living in your brother's house? You mentioned it was a better lifestyle anyway.
Much better lifestyle.
What
Yeah, he
what kind
had.
of change did that bring in your life?
Well, he had a job with Coca-Cola. My sister-in-law, which is weird because she was like my mother figure. He was like my father figure, but they were my
Sure.
brother and sister-in-law. She worked at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is right down the road from where we lived, and
Okay.
so we had it was a much improved financial situation,
Yeah.
and so I just started going to school, and I talked like a hillbilly at first. And because that's where I grew up. So I talk like a Southern Kentucky hillbilly, and then people make fun of me enough that I worked on it. And
Yes.
I still have an accent now because I live in Georgia, but it's not. It ain't near as thick as it used to be.
Sure.
We'll go
But
down
I
there.
can go back at any moment.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah, I'd go down there, and my wife's looking at me like, "You don't talk like that." Like, well, going down there at Mom and them's have supper tonight, Anyway.
Wow. Do not go KFC on me tonight. Please do not even do that. Okay. Please
We're
don't do
good.
that.
We're good.
So you were 12, 13. What? Just
Yeah,
going to school? What kind of things were you interested in back in those days?
I was interested in girls mostly,
Okay.
and I was playing music mostly in my garage with my little electric guitar and set up, and somebody heard me, and friend of a future friend of mine heard me at my school, and they were older than me, and they said, "You want to join our band?" And so I joined the band at 12.
Wow.
And they were all in high school. And at 13, I mean, they were good players too. They were better players than me, but I was a singer and had a female singer and a black singer, so there three of us could cover all the bases.
Sure.
And so the band was exceptionally good for our age. And when I was 13, we got to play on the David Letterman show, which was
Wow.
it was just a Saturday goofy show, a variety show kind of
Because
thing.
he was a local weatherman
He
in
was the weather.
Indianapolis, right? That's how he started out,
And he
right?
was kind of a personality as well. But so he had a show on the weekends, and he would have local bands come and play. And we were by far the youngest he had. And he used to kind of pick on him and make fun of him and stuff, but he liked us enough where he had us back. And
Scott, I want to ask a question from a music standpoint. Those early years, that garage band, who were your influences? Who were you mimicking? Whose riffs were you trying to lay down? What were you from a musical standpoint?
I was more in the Creedence Clearwater, simple 3-chord stuff. My lead guitar was more of a prog kind of guy. He was more into the Clapton and Hendrix and that kind of stuff, the more, guitar god kind of groups.
Yeah.
So we did quite a mixture. The girl singer was into the folk 12-string stuff, and the black singer just could sing anything. He was amazing.
Wow. Were you doing covers primarily then, or did you start
it was all
dabbling
covered.
in writing or anything?
We did we did a few originals. I wrote 2 songs that we did, and they were surprised at how good they were for as young as I was. So.
And did you get to sing a lot then, or were you kind of more of a rhythm and background? Okay, cool. You were your chop.
I was one of the 3 front men, so to speak.
Any recordings still exist of those anywhere?
I would kill.
Wouldn't you love to have those back?
Yeah, I would. I so would.
Excuse me. I mean, these kids now that are carrying 4K cameras in their pockets, you're like, okay, look, I got slides of me. That's all I got. I'd kill to have some of those recordings.
This would have been like 73, 74 time frame. Is that? I'm just trying to put it in perspective.
Yeah, 72, 3.
Okay. Yeah.
I graduated in 76. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously you had to know that you had a musical talent that was unique at some point.
People kept telling me that. Yeah. They were like, all my music teachers were trying to be very encouraging, and that really did help. I was in all the musicals all the way through 9th grade through senior year, and I was Conrad Birdie and Bye Bye Birdie in my junior year. Which was the central figure, and then I was Tony in West Side Story my senior year. So I did all that, I didn't have a guitar. I didn't have a guitar to hide behind, so I had to get out there and dance and sing and hold the crowd. So
what was it about that you think that you found very attractive?
I just love moving people. I don't care if it's 12 people or 1,200 people or 12,000 people. I just like moving people. It's not like, look at me. It's like, I want them to experience something. I want them to feel something and I wanted them to have something to take home. And I was actually still really shy all the way through school. And I was popular just because of all the stuff I was involved in. I was on homecoming court. I didn't win, prom court. I didn't
Still
win.
A little bitter about it, maybe.
No, I was top 5 in the school.
Okay.
But I was shocked. Every time something like that would happen, I was literally shocked that, people saw me that way. And all the way through into Mylon situation, I was just shocked that people responded to me the way they did. And I think a lot of that was just because of my humble beginnings, nobody from Kentucky kind of thing. And that stuff never left me,
Okay.
And to be honest, my brother, when he took me in, he kind of was real hard on me. And he wanted to, take a lump of coal and make it into a diamond in as short a time as possible. So he was real hard on me, and kind of in a degrading way sometimes. But that's the way he was raised. That's the way we were all raised.
Sure.
But so I kind of carried a lot of that with me too. That you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not, So I would try to excel, and it would work. I mean, I would get the parts and it would be successful, but I was always like, what's next? I guess that, you know what I mean? That kind of, I never had that. Okay, I can do this. Until much later. So
felt like you were always having to prove yourself in one way or the other.
Oh, yeah.
Every
day.
Okay.
Every
So
day.
you're wrapping up high school or coming to an end, and what happens then? What does that look like?
It went like boom. I mean, literally walked by my high school one day and sobbed because it's like my life is over. Nobody's going to know who I'm starting all over again,
Wow.
And I wasn't in a band at that time, and I was kind of flailing. And thankfully, my girlfriend that at the time was a good Christian girl, and we went to church all the time, and that kind of kept me grounded. And his ambassadors came into my church to do a concert, and they said, we're looking for a singer if anybody wants to audition. And I did, and I got it, and I joined the band.
Wow.
And from right out of high school, I was still 17, and they flew me out to Denver, Colorado in an L-1011. I'd never even been to the airport, much less on a plane. And flew into Denver, Colorado, and it's in the morning, and the sun is shining on those mountains, and I was like, oh, this my life. Oh, thank you, God. It literally was like God is really looking out for me,
Yeah.
And that was a life-changing thing. And being with
Sure.
his ambassadors, and eternity was like the next level up from his ambassadors. They were both out of Florida Bible College.
Okay.
And I went there for 1 year in between the groups. Got more grounded in the word and stuff. So
Yeah. Wow.
Did you have to say goodbye to the girlfriends, say goodbye to home, or were you connected there? How did that go?
Well, it worked out that we kind of went our separate. She went to college and I didn't, and we kind of went our separate ways right before then. So it worked out actually perfectly, and we stay in touch even to this day. She's my friend on Facebook, and
Awesome.
he's
And
loving.
did you hit the road then? Did you tour with those guys a lot?
Yeah. Oh, that's all. We stayed on the road
all the time.
We lived on the road. There was I had no home other than wherever we were staying, and
it was a very heavy evangelistic type effort, right?
There,
it wasn't more. It was music was part of it, but you were the lead. It was all about the ministry and altar calls and follow up and the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah. Florida Bible College was they were the antithesis of the Pentecostal. They were cut your hair and look like Pat Boone and, sing like Pat Boone and be very conservative. And I just came to pray. It was okay. But it just wasn't my deal. But I thought, well, this is what I have to do to be Christian. I have to cut all I had the hair down to here in my high school years in my band. Sure. I had to radically change and it was good. It's boot camp, for me. And then as I progressed, I just got a little more rock and roll.
Sure. Did you have any formal musical training in all of this, David, or has it all just been a gift of God that you've worked on your own?
Never had any lessons of any kind. I took one guitar lesson and we ended up just jamming because I knew almost pretty much as he could read music and could have taught me that, but why? What's the point now? What's the point? If I just starting, I think it would help. But Eric Clapton never couldn't read music, and none of my guitar heroes could read music. So it's like, what's the point? So
if you're not a studio musician, it doesn't matter anymore,
right,
does it? Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. Well, and so at some point, I have this feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, but that your views of Jesus and the whole experience may have taken a change from what you grew up with. Do you mind how has that evolved over the years?
I've had some really cool experiences because I had that pounded in my head that it's all about saved by grace through faith, and all that stuff. And it's just really cut and dry. And, to be a Christian, you have to fit in the box. And it's kind of like the Pentecostals, you got to fit in that box, but this was whole another box. And none of it really rang completely true to me. The gospel, of course, did, but it wasn't me. I came from rock and roll and Creedence Clearwater and Grand Funk and Kansas and all that stuff. And now I'm playing Gaither style stuff. And it was beautiful stuff, great stuff. It was a good boot camp for me, but it wasn't like boot camp. You got to go out and do the job.
Right.
And so I went from, like I said, Pentecostal holiness to this very cut and dry, independent, fundamental Baptist kind of thing. And then Cruz family was kind of a breakthrough for me because they rocked it pretty good. And they were Baptist, but they were more expressive, free, and had longer hair. And, and that was a lot more my wheelhouse. And then from there, I moved to Atlanta, and then I played in a band called LeFevre for 2 years. And that was a serious musical boot camp for me.
Okay.
They played in high schools and in middle schools 10 to 15 shows a week. And we were on the road for 10 months. And all the stuff that I did with Mylon, all the jumping around on stage and, getting into audience and all that stuff, I learned in LeFevre because that's what they teach you to do. It's how to hold, especially with high school.
Right.
You're the party's audience. You come out of nowhere and they don't know who you are. You got to rock their faces off and get them with you and then give them the gospel. Just enough of the gospel to plant a seed,
Yeah.
And I did that for 2 years. And the reason I got with Mylon was because I did that. They heard about me, or they went through Young American Showcase, which is the company that put 10 or 11 bands called Free Fair and Freedom Jam out every year all over. I went all the way up to Newfoundland and stuff with those guys.
Is that Free Fair, did it kind of follow its course and then peter out or shut down? It's not
no, they started in the late 60s, and one band and then two bands and then three bands. And by the time I was with them in 82 and 83, there were 11 bands. And
wow.
Yeah.
With that going to the schools and, positive lyrics and
okay. Cool. Well, we do rock and roll. I mean, we opened Crazy Train and,
all right, let's go.
Yeah. I mean, we did all secular music because that's, anything other than that wouldn't fly. And then we do like some funny skits and get people out of the audience and, make fun of the food in the school cafeteria and just that they knew how to get everybody with you, and with the comedy and with the rock and roll and the hair and the type, leather pants. And, we kind of came out of nowhere and just rocked their faces off. And they were like, yeah. And
that's
then
awesome.
We say, we're doing a concert tomorrow night. And it's like $2 to get in.
Right.
And of course the place would pack out and they'd bring their friends from other schools. And
so
we did a 9 show for them. And then we would do more of a, you might know something different about us. We're not like typical rock and rollers. It's because we all believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And, we go through
that's awesome.
Kind of a bite-sized gospel for them.
Sure.
And, we didn't do an altar call or anything. But surprisingly, back then, we'd usually get like a big applause for that.
Yeah.
So that was late 70s, early 80s, late 70s.
That was 82.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you're right up against, if you're going to go to Mylon next, which was 84, 85 when you went to Mylon?
84 through 86.
84 through 86. Sweet time. Wow. Now I'm starting to connect the dots a little bit and watching Mylon's career go from, just his style and that arena rock to where now I'm seeing some of your theatrics. And rumor has it, I was going to ask you that you might have actually taught a few choreography moves to Mylon in the group. You might have been the one responsible for the Trains Up in the Sky. I'm not so sure, but I've been told you might have been the choreographer for some of that. Is that true?
Actually, Paul Joseph did a lot of the Trains Up in the Sky, but I'd already done most of the show.
Nice.
I'm not trying to take credit for it, but Mylon actually said that when I left the group. He said, "You sold a bunch of tickets for us, brother." And
it was a big jump, and I watched the crowds respond. It was neat. It was fun. That was that kind of that golden period for Mylon.
In 84, we were in a motorhome. When I got in the band, it was like a used motorhome that Mylon had bought from his brother. It was really used, and a box truck. And I joined the band, and I was doing what I always did. I was all over the stage and getting, communicating with the audience and never looking at my guitar. That's what they teach you at Free Fair, and nothing but constant energy, unless there's a reason, and unless Mylon's speaking, and you don't misdirect at all. And they teach you all that stuff. So Mylon noticed that, and I was getting a great response, and he said, "Show the guys some of this stuff." And I ended up choreographing the whole show, pretty much. Yeah.
Some good stuff. Scott, I don't know if you've seen some of this, but this is from, and there wasn't a lot of live concert videos in Christian music back in the day. This one came out, and the guys had, they had their look. Of course, I'm digging the pants. I'm digging, the tank top. I'm really jealous with the hair. The chest
your children know you dress like that? Is that
so embarrassed?
Yeah.
I have one daughter, that's all, but yeah. I mean, she does music as well. She's not a professional, but she is very talented, and she understands why I did what I did. And
nice.
They threw me out on the stage for 3 or 4 minutes, and I had the whole audience to myself, and it was so much fun. But I'd bring it down to Amazing Grace at the end, which is the whole reason for doing it.
So cool. It was so cool.
You got
the sheep in wolf's clothing. Yeah. Go ahead.
You have to earn the right to be heard. They have to respect you. And wow, he's a great rock and roll and guitar and sing. And then it's like, oh, he's a Christian. well, what's that about? And once you have earned the right to be heard, which is kind of the principle, the whole reason you do what you do, then you can feed them the spiritual stuff, and they're gobbling it up. And that's how it works.
And I'll add to this was a period of time where you had a lot of kids that were, we were coming of age and we were trying to deal with our love for Rush and AC/DC and all that stuff. And Mylon and his group and what David and them were doing were providing, I mean, their chops were really good.
Yes.
We just heard his story and, he what led him to this point here, it was really honing his craft, but it was kind of the perfect storm. And so groups like Mylon and Broken Heart filled this void that was so desperate for those of us that, we're into the doobies and we're into, we needed something to take the place of Aerosmith for our moms, if nothing else.
Right.
Yeah.
But then but when we got to the show, we were blown away. And so we also, when we went to school, we didn't have to go apologize and go, well, it's kind of this thing. No, man, you need to check this out. That was the era of, do you like Rush? Then you're going to like this. If I don't know if David remembers that, but there was actually books about, you'd have a chart that would tell you,
if you like
this
band, you'll like this band.
Yeah. Right. And it
well,
was a special time.
By the time we were out at this level, there were great bands out. There was, Sweet Comfort Band and Allies, and I mean all these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and they opened for us, which was the craziest thing because they're incredible bands, and we're just kind of guys from Atlanta, and we never, God put it together. We were not credible. None of us were incredible players. I mean, I could show off and make it look like I was a great player, but I mean, I was just a blues player, and Dean Harrington, who was in the band before me, could play circles around me. He was like just a monster on the guitar, but I had a little more stage presence than he did, so it worked better for the band, And the band really was a blues band, should have been. We kind of went a little techno pop there in the '80s, which I don't think should have happened, but we butted heads a little bit. Well, let's do our wheelhouse. You're a blues singer. I'm a blues guitar player. Let's do bluesy stuff, more rock and roll stuff. But Mylon was a little, I think, insecure that he wasn't relevant because of all the techno pop in the '80s and the MTV and all that stuff. I feel like he felt like he had to incorporate all that stuff and all the, 80s produced tracks and stuff. And
well, was the record company putting pressure to make videos and do the stage show thing and all that, I would imagine?
Well, the stage show we did, I don't believe that they never influenced us. We put all that together. Wow. We got a great light guy. Rich Schaefer was an amazing, talented light guy. And Clay Spivey was good on sound. And he was also our road manager. And Punky was amazing. He took care of everything on stage and was a monitor mixer. And we just had a lot of raw talent, but it was raw. And it
was a lot of work. Y'all had a huge crew and the trucks and the whole 9 yards. And so were you gone by the time Crack the Sky? Did you do Look Up?
I was there during Look Up, but that was, to be honest with you, that was pretty much all recorded before I got there.
A bunch of studio stuff that I got the impression it was kind of all unreal. It was like, let's pull this out and
exactly,
kind of water it down a little bit and roll it out there and see if it sticks.
Pick it up a bit. Yeah.
Which, for what it's worth, if you're fairly new or you only know just kind of the hits of Mylon and Broken Heart, I say go listen to Look Up. There's some great tunes on there.
Yeah.
It really went under the radar.
That was more of what Mylon should have been doing, I think, all along. But
it kind of had that Atlanta rhythm section vibe that he always brought, that was his wheelhouse. And I could tell there was always this kind of push-pull of management and styles and everything like that. And then at some point, not to get too deep in that, I mean, Mylon was getting up in age and he was having, I remember one of the big jokes was the lyrics. And I'm sure you guys have plenty of stories about, okay, Mylon's forgotten the words again. Somebody start playing.
Well, it didn't get that bad until after I left. I heard a lot of stuff and even some of the things were all pre-recorded, and he would sing with.
No, Milli Vanilli. Do not mess with my memories.
No, I'm not all of it, but maybe some of the more technical, high range stuff and stuff.
Oh, you got to.
When he would,
Yeah.
Later on in the recording situation, I heard he he'd do 10 takes, and then they would Frankenstein the best parts together. But
I will say this, as much as, he was the front man, it was about him, and he was the heart and soul. I thought he did a great job of giving you guys room to roll and plenty of step outs, and it just seemed like a family. I mean, I'm not trying to blow smoke, but it just really seemed like as a family.
It was, and it was all about Jesus, man. I mean, even on the bus, I went on the bus with some other artists and stuff, and Jesus never even came up. But with Mylon and Broken Heart, especially, we prayed all the time. If we didn't read our Bible every day, it was like, what's wrong, brother? We were living for God the whole time. And when I was home, of course, I was the only single guy in the band, and,
Really?
girls were available. And I was like, that was always my drug of choice. So I had to really keep a lot of self-control in that area.
Did one of the guys in particular did you connect with as kind of just a brother that just helped keep you sharp and, you leaned on? Did you have anybody at that point that was really reaching out to you? Because they all had families. That had to have been tough.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that's kind of the reason I left, is because I didn't really fit in.
Gotcha.
I was a mess emotionally, and a lot of that trauma, I still carry it.
Wow.
So things would happen, and like I said, I'm on the spectrum, and I would say and do things inappropriate, and I was always behind the eight ball, so to speak. I was kind of like the black sheep a little bit, and Mylon was hard on me, and justifiably so. But it got to be toward the end where I had nowhere to go. I had no family to speak of. I had my brothers and sisters up in Kentucky, but that was kind of not an option at this point in my life. He would fire me all the time. He'd say, "Oh man, I just can't work with you anymore." Of course, I'm like, "Oh God, what am I going to do?" And he did that enough times where and of course he changed his mind, and all right, I'll give you another chance. And finally he did it more than too many times. And I had this girlfriend, she'd been married twice before, and she had 2 kids already. And I saw instant family. So I had somewhere to go. So he fired me, and I was like, okay, fine. And I'll help you work in the next guy and everything. I'll be the right thing. And I worked in Michael Terrell. He was an amazing guitar player. He didn't really fit with the band, but he was like just a shredder. He was amazing, but he didn't really fit with the band. He didn't have the presence, so to speak. I'm just telling you what I've been told.
Absolutely.
But
did you feel, was it a struggle? Was that just another layer to some of those insecurities that, okay, now I'm in the band, but I'm kind of I'm outside looking in. I'm not really on the in crowd of this band, and I'm really kind of having to struggle. And not to mention you're flipping Mylon LeFevre, and you guys are these spiritual giants, and some of this stuff. I mean, we all have our issues, and we say and do things in the heat of the battle. And I know from my perspective, there was financial struggles, to keep that thing on the road. I knew what it cost to tour those tours. And I knew it was difficult, and
all the money went into the show and the bus and the lights and the production, and we got paid. When I left the band, I was making $175 a week.
Wow.
And there were 4 of us living in the same apartment because that's all we could afford. And that's the way it was. We didn't make any, none of us made any money. Even the married guys, I think they only made $225, $250. So their wives had to work, and, they started having kids, and I don't know what happened after I left financially. They finally started, Mylon finally started writing with the guys. And so they got on, some of the royalties.
Some of the royalties a little bit.
But yeah, I wasn't involved in any of that. So,
and yet you're performing in front of tens and thousands of people. The assumption is you're riding high, you got money to burn, and you're living the dream. And the reality is, man, I am just struggling to do this. And I love Jesus, and he's blessing me, and it's awesome. But what do I do with these other feelings? Right?
I didn't even have a car when I left the group. I mean, I married this woman way too soon, and she was the wrong person. I was basically sold a bill of goods with that situation, but I was so desperate to have somewhere to go, you know. And
David, is one question I have going back to your childhood. One of the things I know is when you go through trauma like that, you feel alone.
yeah,
You can be in a room full of people and still feel like you don't fit. Nobody there really understands who you are or what you're about.
no,
Is that a fair statement? And maybe
exactly.
kind of tell a little bit about what that
You
was.
nailed it.
Yeah, yeah.
My mom was married 4 times total, and my father was her third husband, and I was his only child. So
Okay.
when he died, I lost my father, but my brothers and sisters still had theirs.
Okay.
And then I lost my mother, and they lost their mother as well, but they still had fathers and, step
Yes.
brothers and sisters. And I was definitely, I was alone. And I just, I didn't, I was in a mess so many times. I hit so many rock bottom so many times. I've got calluses from bouncing, but, but Jesus was always there.
Yeah.
Always there.
Yeah.
And I was so thankful for that, because without him, I could do nothing. You know what I mean? That's rings so true. That's why everybody loves that song. Because honest to God, whatever I accomplished or whatever, anybody I ever reached was totally because of him pulling me out of the gutter, so to speak. Emotionally.
Wow. How how did you get out of that? Because we're in 1986, 87. You don't have a car. You're married.
I'm married and I'm driving her car, and I get this little job driving a forklift in a warehouse and making, you know, $20,000 a year, and she's working this little after school care job, and I'm poor again. You know,
Yeah.
well, I was poor the whole time, but at least I was on the road being taken care of and being fed. And if Mylon didn't buy our show clothes, we would have looked like chumps on stage, because we couldn't afford that stuff. So the leather pants, I didn't buy those. Yeah, he kept us up and took good care of us on the road, and we ate well, and nice hotels and stuff. But when we were home, we were just broke.
Yeah.
So, but
How did you? So you're out of music at this point?
out of music.
Yeah.
And Greg Menza came to my birthday party. Greg Menza was Mylon's booking agent at the time, and Dean Harrington came, and a few of the guys came over and went to my 30th birthday party. And Greg said, "What are you doing now musically?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No, I'm not really. I've done a few of these. I've written a bunch of songs, and I've got on cassette over here that I've just got recorded on my little 4-track." He said, "Well, let me hear some of them." And so I played them. He said, "Man, we got to get you a CD. We got to get you recording and doing music again, because he could see how miserable I was."
Mm-hmm.
And he kicked my butt and got me going again. I made a CD, and it was taken by Refuge Records and released nationally, and it was enough to get me back on the road again.
Wow.
And if I wasn't on the road 60 to 70% of the time, my marriage wouldn't have lasted 14 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Need a little space, did you?
yeah,
Okay.
and I made being solo, and selling merch and CDs, and it's more money than I'd ever made in my life. And I was ministering. I was doing youth camps and retreats and mostly stuff like that, and youth rallies. And I played off the name Mylon's former guitar player and all that stuff. But eventually I made, I didn't have to do that anymore.
Right.
So I did that until 2000, when I just couldn't live like I was living anymore. Yeah, that's it. And I did that until 2000. And I won't go into all the gory details, but I was released by God to not be married anymore because of various reasons. I won't go into all that, but
Sure.
so I left. I moved out on my own. I had this stucco company going, and I started making good money with that. I was going on the road on the weekends, doing my music, my ministry, and stuff. And my ex-wife called everybody that I ever played for that she could find and told them the most horrible, ridiculous things and just slandered me all over the country because she was so vindictive about me divorcing her. And so my ministry just went, and I haven't been in full-time ministry ever since then. And it was 2000. Yeah. And then I met a girl in church back in 84 when I first got with Mylon, and I'm married to her now. I married her in 2001.
Wow.
We've been married happily ever since. And she encouraged me to do my music, which my other former wife did not encourage me to do. She wanted me to have a real job, benefits. I don't care about your music. You need to provide for these kids. And so I was the meal ticket for 14 years. But now I'm very happily married. That's before we got married. That was 2001. So that's how old that picture is. Wow. But we're still like that. We are so in love. We are so happy, and we love the Lord. And we go to church, and I play, covers and stuff at weddings and parties and corporate events and stuff like that. But I'm just using the music to make a living now. Basically, the ministry part is kind of non-existent, which I'm not happy about. But who knows?
Would you get back into some type of ministry if it was made available?
I would love to do that. I would love to do that again. That's kind of my heart's desire. I see people out like Tim Hawkins and, who are funny and cool and doing music. He's more of a comedian, but I would do more music. But I did all that stuff. I did a lot of joking around and parodies. I did an Amazing Grace medley where I would start with Elvis and the Beatles and the Beach Boys and go through Jimi Hendrix and ZZ Top and end up at Nirvana, But
I'm in.
Yeah, I see that. That's greatness.
And I put the tracks together so it sounded, I had the band behind me, so to speak, and I'd play the guitar parts, which is again that earning the right to be heard. I'd do all that before I would do my testimony and all that, and I would love to do all that again. I seriously would.
I was going to ask, this is something that Chris and I have brought up, that, the Christian entertainment has changed quite a bit in the last 20 years.
Right.
The market's not what it used to be. And it's a completely different style of music that's listened to. Do you think that's had some impact on the acceptance of somebody that would have your skill set in the marketplace? Because, we talk about it. It seems like it's all praise music all the time now, right? I mean, obviously you can play more than the 3 chords required to do most praise music.
Right. Well, I did that for a while too. I actually had worked my way up at the Atlanta Vineyard. They needed a bass player, on an emergency bass player. So I went out and bought a bass. I'd never owned one before. And I jumped in it, and I played bass for a year. Okay. And then we need a drummer. Can you? Yeah, and I played drums. So I played drums for a year, and then I played guitar and sang with the worship leaders and stuff for a year or so. And then I was a worship leader, and I love that. But I mean, it don't pay the bills. They don't pay anything. Actually, they didn't. Some people do now, but so I love doing that. But even that is not really my wheelhouse. I want to preach and teach and I want to move people like I always move people.
Well, and it seems like
for God,
like Christian entertainment has moved away from the evangelism. It's more worship and less evangelism. And I get the feeling that you're an evangelist. You're there to spread the good news. You are gospel oriented.
Exactly.
And the way you're going to do
I am an evangelist. I've always been an evangelist, and music is my tool to get their attention so I can preach the word to them, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said, I want to move people I want to turn their faces toward the Lord, and use whatever I've got to do so. Yeah. And
so Scott, this is a good segue. This is another image I pulled up. I want him to talk a little bit about. This is a different side of him. We talked about the high school thespian. But this is actually a production I'm familiar with. We did it at our venue. And
Oh,
so,
you did?
yeah, tell me a little about you're doing the banjo thing. And I don't know if this was a short-lived thing, but did you enjoy doing this? Is this something you do again?
Yeah. I mean, I love all those people. They were all loved Jesus and they were all talented. Oh my gosh, they were so talented. And somebody told me I need Debbie Walker from Mount Parent Church, where we're all from.
Yeah.
Said, would you come and audition for this play we're putting together, production we're putting together? And I said, sure. And I didn't have anything else to do. So I went in and I read for the part and they said, well, you're definitely going to be Uncle Stanley. And they tried to have a background bluegrass band separate from us. And we would just kind of pick along with them. But it turned out that everybody were great players. Wow. Doug right there in the center, he's an amazing piano player and worship leader and great singer. And they're all talented. They're all just crazy talented.
There's nothing like doing a production like that. I don't know how long you guys got to do it, but you literally become family. I mean, it's so intense for such a period of time, and then all of a sudden it's over, and you're like,
we did 3 or 4 shows for 3.5 years. We did over 300 shows.
Was it at Mount Perrin or was it somewhere?
No, it was all over. A lot of it was up at the playhouses and different,
sure,
theaters.
People are on vacation or sure whatever it is, church thing or something. That's so cool, so fun.
Yeah, and I didn't own a banjo, but I went and bought one. And
what you seem like you're tailor made for Branson. Did you not have a swim through Branson? Well, no. You gotta have a do over on that.
One of my friends says you need to be the next Roy Clark or something like that. I was like,
oh, I could see that for sure.
Yeah,
I'm a little more rock and roll than Roy Clark, and I'm not near as the player he was. But
that's true.
But I think he thinks I look like Roy Clark or something.
We could do some of that.
I got Chubby.
I wanted to share just a little bit, and I don't want to steal Scott's thunder, but something that he's been teaching me for the last 5 or 6 years, and that is to learn the blessings that come through the suffering. And one of the things we'd hope to do with this, I'd had this itch. I said, I just really know there's so many stories. I got to meet so many neat people during that period, but there's so many more, especially not the front people. I'm wanting to get to know the band members and those folks that were studio musicians and just so many that were a part of a unique period of time where Jesus music came around, and I tell people we went from 8 tracks to Napster, and a lot of things happened in between there, and churches changed and radio stations changed and everything changed, but it wasn't all roses. And I got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I met some great people, and people are people. I met some people that are like, I hope have repented and changed and grown. But I just so many people that just to hear your story that you just never gave up. You just continued to just put one foot in front of the other, and to be vulnerable now to say, I went through a bunch of crap, and I just know one thing: there is a God, and I'm not him.
Yeah, right. So vulnerable what reaches people, being who you are and being honest about it, and being not putting on a facade. Facades are of the devil, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, not a lot, but a few of the people that we played with it was a show, and they would have, studio players who didn't even know, didn't even believe in the Lord, coming out.
What would you say to somebody that's like, y'all are just a bunch of hypocrites, especially the people, especially preachers, especially musicians, all you people are in it for the money. You're just a bunch of hypocrites.
I'd tell them what I made, what I made for a living, and I could shut them down real quick with all that stuff. But you were talking about the Jesus movement. I wanted to insert something here. When I was at Florida Bible College, in between His Ambassadors in Eternity, I was alone there, but I was surrounded by Bible people. But I was confused because I still believed in the Holy Spirit was not acknowledged very much in that situation. And I was like, I was kind of, I knew this wasn't it. The independent fundamental wasn't it. The Pentecostal holiness wasn't it as far as the sinner. I wanted to know, where's Jesus go? What does Jesus want me to do? And I went to a Larry Norman concert and while I was at Florida Bible College, which was kind of Ooh, and he came out and met everybody and was being real nice, and everybody wanted autographs and pictures and all that stuff. And he raised his hand and said, "Does anybody need to pray about anything?" And I just was, "Yes, I do." And he grabbed me by the hand and he took me in the back room to a Sunday school room, and me and him closed the door, and me and him sat there and talked. And I told him about my confusion about the Holy Spirit. And he said, "Brother, I'm not," he said, "I'm not going to tell you what to believe, or I'm not going to diss this person or tell you this is it, but you seek God your way. You pray your way. You get alone with God, and he'll show you." And he did. It took a while for me to get to where I was and am, but I believe I am accepting of all of the, different manifestations of how people worship, and I can be involved in all of it because I've experienced it. But it's all about Jesus, and it's all about the Holy Spirit, and
How,
going to the Father through Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and having a
how,
relationship with all of that.
how freeing was that for you, just having that discussion and him sharing that with you?
It was amazing, and I doubt he would ever remember it, because I'm sure he did that everywhere he went, and he was out there for decades. But yeah, it was life changing. And later on, I mean, I'm getting emails and people finding me on Facebook saying that I had that influence on them, and I'm like, oh my God, really? This means so much to me. That you could be who you are and really focus in on the Lord and lead people to the Lord, and just, it's not about me,
Wow.
and not enough people do that.
No.
And you talk about everything's worship now, but everything's not everything. There's too much worship show going on. It's a worship show. We go to these big amphitheaters, and there's a big show going on. And it's about, they're singing about Jesus, but I don't know, man. I don't see lives being changed through that. I saw thousands, tens of thousands of lives being changed in 2 years that I was with them. And I'm still getting people finding me and said, "You guys changed my life. You guys changed my life." Like,
isn't that awesome? And you're going to get that. You're going to get that. The old Ray Bolt song, you're going to have people come up to you. There's going to be a long line going, "Bro, I was there that night and you said something, and I'm here because of you." And I encourage you to remember that when you're down and when you just feel like, did any of that make a difference? And just, I got people in my life that remind me of that, but definitely for you, for sure. And just real quick, let me say something to what you said a minute ago. I think now you've kind of come back around and talked about the hypocrisy thing. I think we are all in that same boat. Just because you have a gift and you're on the stage, you realize I'm no different than you out there, and you kept your humility. And so to say, at some point, what happens is the enemy gets to us and says, you are pretty special, and you're pretty much my mouthpiece to these people, as opposed to, what? We don't need any of this stuff. We don't need any of this stuff. And that was his whole point, was to come and say, I'm going to tear down the wall. You don't have to go through a priest. You don't have to go to a booth. It's you and me. And so for somebody just to remind you that this is all it's about, it's going to be you and him at the end anyway.
Right.
So I just find that so refreshing.
One of my illustrations is, we're born here, we die here. Whatever we do between this amount of time determines how we spend from here out past all the galaxies of the whole universe. So what's more important, this or that? And I want to be with Jesus. I don't even believe heaven is streets and buildings and walls. And I believe heaven is just a whole nother dimension that we can't imagine. I think that they describe it in a way that we can grasp it. But I believe heaven is beyond like what we can imagine,
Let me ask this, David. I love the way that you described that. Let me ask this, because as we age, and we're all getting to a point in our lives where we're a little older, and we've got a few what I refer to as character scars to show for what we've been through. Would you mind sharing what you think? Obviously you've had lots of hardship and challenges. How has that made you a different person? What would you say has been the things that have had an impact on you, that even though you may not have wanted to go down that path, made you a better person at the end, as you're beginning to approach the end of this road, made you a stronger believer or a more faithful person or something like that?
It's all the lights and the autographs and the screaming and all that stuff, even in high school being popular and all the working up to the big time, so to speak. I always had that broken foundation that I don't deserve this. And it's in a good way. I don't deserve this. This is not me. This is God using me. And another illustration I used to use was God looked down and he saw this glove in the sewer, and had holes all in it, and it was filthy, and it was just thrown away and cast away. And he decided to pick it up and put it against it. Pick it up and put it on his hand and use it. And that was me. I was that glove. And he used it in spite of it, in spite of the brokenness and the dirt and the holes. He used it and did powerful things. It wasn't the glove. It was his hand. Wow. And that's what he does with all of us. None of us deserve this. None of us are worthy to be even looked at by God, but because he loved us so much, he not only looks at us, he loves us and lifts us and uses us. And that's what got me going. I always, of course I'd fall and I would get angry and depressed, and I'm literally diagnosed bipolar and all this stuff. And I've fallen hard sometimes, but there's always that he lifts me back up.
As we go forward, like I said, we know that our time is coming. It's fast approaching. What would you like to be remembered for? What would you like your legacy to be? What would you want your grandchildren and great grandchildren to say about you?
Just basically what I just said. God used him for glory and changed in some way thousands and thousands of lives. Made them look toward Jesus, or drew them closer to Jesus, or made them think about the Lord. That's really what I want my legacy. I don't care. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be playing in cover music in restaurants and corporate things if I cared about my stardom, because I could have made more CDs. I could have, tried to keep going and be an artist, recording artist, so to speak, but that's not what I desire. I'm kind of, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit lost right now because I don't know how to get from here to there again. And if you guys, everybody out there would pray for me, because I'm really at a place now where this is where I'm at is not it.
Yeah. I got to say, for an epitaph to go on somebody's gravestone, it's real simple. God used him.
Yeah.
If they put the birth date and the death date, and right in the middle is God used him, what a wonderful life that reflects, David.
Exactly.
What an amazing life that reflects.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
I just love the transparency. I love the authenticity, and how you just, I'm a firm believer that God's not done with us and we got lots more to go, as long as we're still here, as long as we get another breath. And I just think, every day we get an opportunity to meet somebody new and make another connection, and we find out, maybe for such a time as this.
We believe our best days are still in front of us, and we're not going to go out, being carried across the line. We're going in, kicking down the door and walking in and letting heaven know, hey, baby, I'm here,
Right.
So I see you doing that as well. So don't give up the fight, brother. It's just started. Started.
I got a question. That kind of might be a little bit as we kind of wind down. If we could wave a magic wand and send you back in time to 18, 19, 20-year-old David, what would current time David tell young him? David again? Yeah.
Well, do it all, everything for Jesus. Don't try to act a certain way or be a certain way or dress a certain way, or do everything you do authentically for Jesus. And marry Charlotte. Don't marry, that would be too thin. And invest in a house. Invest in Apple.
Invest in Apple.
Yeah.
Well played. Well played, sir. Well played, sir. Hey, David, how can people get a hold of you? Is it best to start at your website?
Yeah, my phone number's on there. I mean, it's my cell phone number, and
Okay.
anybody want to get a text me, call me,
Awesome.
email me.
Awesome.
It's thedavidpayton@gmail.com.
Cool,
And
man.
love to hear from you. You don't have to book me. You can just talk to me. I don't care. Maybe
Wait,
that's
like a real person.
Yeah.
That's
No
awesome.
reason not.
Well, I would say
cool.
go to your YouTube channel as well. Go type in. You got, I think, 2 channels. I think I was trying to tell the difference, but you got some really good stuff up there. I was telling Scott, I said, this guy is so in our wheelhouse. I mean, the stuff he does, he's amazing. It makes me wish I was in Georgia.
I'd like to do, honestly, I'd like to do that for the Lord,
Yeah, maybe that could happen. In fact, something I would like to do is maybe get the gang back together. I'd love to do something where we're maybe doing a remembrance of Mylon. Some of those people, it's been so soon and so fresh, and we had the pandemic, and that was weird, and everybody scattered. And I doubt, did you get to go to the memorial service?
Yeah.
Was it at Copeland's place, or it was up in that area? Was it?
And we went on stage and sang and cried and did the whole thing.
Oh, y'all got to perform?
Well, with the whole Gaither crowd. And it was just
so cool.
The guy from Skillet was there and his wife, and there's a whole bunch of people.
Wow.
The Gaither vocal band and
imagine. Oh my goodness.
And we all got up on stage at the end, and it's online. Man. You can find it.
Oh, sweet. I have to go find that. But I'd love to maybe do kind of a in memoriam and share stories, funny stories, and just blessings and stuff. So maybe if anybody's watching this video, put it in the comments. Let us know you'd love to see a Mylon remembrance, maybe some of your Mylon stories, and maybe we can see if we can make that happen. We can twist David's arm, maybe get the gang back together or something. We might try to do that. Scott, did you have any closing comments or questions?
No, David, I just appreciate your transparency, brother. And God, God uses broken people. You know what I'm saying? God uses broken people, and
if you deny your brokenness, he can't use you.
I'm just so amazed that he's been able to use you, and I don't think he's done yet. You're still broken.
Your words to God.
Yeah. I mean, and your story's been very inspirational for us today. I hope everybody else enjoys it as much as I did.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for, again, being a part of this and being a little bit vulnerable and just sharing your story. I know it's going to bless a lot of people. If you get a chance in the comments, just lift up David in your prayers. And if you've got a company or you've got a facility or anything, we'd love to get David some work there. And he puts on a great show. He can do a little bit of everything. And God bless you, my friend. You're a blessing to all of us. And we just can't wish you more of the best. And we keep you in our prayers. All right.
Thank you so much. I love you guys.
Good night, David. Love you, buddy.
My brother. Take care, my brother.
Bye.